Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Hi folks, Cesar here. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a pretty serious show this evening. In the news, you've probably heard Governor McAuliffe here in Virginia is pushing forward some gun safety measures. And there's been a big firestorm surrounding that. He promised it in the election, and he's delivering. Tonight I have a bunch of people, a good panel, but first I wanted to bring on someone that's very much familiar with this issue. Lisette Johnson. She is an intimate partner murder survivor. And after spending about 21 years in a very abusive marriage, she was threatened several times of being killed herself. She attempted to leave the marriage several times. She finally exited the marriage safely in October of 2009. And despite some assurances of her husband that all the firearms had been removed from the premises, he shot her several times with a gun that he had hidden before taking his own life. You should know their 9- and 12-year-old children were also in the home at the time. She now serves as a peer advocate in the Injury and Violence Prevention Program at VCU Medical Center. And she's here to talk about her experiences and why this is such an important issue. Lisette, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
You drove up from Richmond. This is pretty important for you.
It's very important.
Yeah. Give us a little bit of background on why you are so passionate about this, beyond the obvious.
You know, I think that everyone deserves to be respected, to have a relationship that is mutually fulfilling. And there are so many people we don't even know about that are actually trapped. They're like prisoners of war in their own home. And I'm especially passionate about children because my children did witness this. I've seen the last 5 years of what they've had to go through. My concern when I was leaving was to give them a better, healthier relationship model than what their father and I had together. But after he shot me and shot himself, they've been beyond traumatized. And what they've had to go through will affect them their whole lives. And my question initially was, who will they be in 5 years or 10 years? Sure. And now my passion is, who will these children who are living in violent homes be in 5 or 10 or 15 years? And they're going to be taking care of you and me. You know, they'll be the leading members of our society. We hope that they will be. But they're also going to be carrying around tremendous trauma from witnessing these types of events.
Now, we talked earlier, this isn't limited to one segment in our society, correct?
No. For me, I think perhaps abuse happens differently in different segments, different educational segments, different socioeconomic segments. You know, I was a business owner. Right. I had 9 employees. I couldn't, even if I had wanted to seek shelter, he knew where to come find me at my office. I couldn't tell my 9 employees I'm going to live at a shelter. I couldn't shut my business down. And he was a very well-respected member of the community. People thought very highly of him. They had no idea what was going on behind closed doors.
So it's a little different picture than what I think most of us would have of someone, a woman, in an abusive relationship.
It spans race, it spans sexual orientation, it spans education, economics. It is a non-discriminatory, it hits everyone.
When you went for help, when you reached out, what was that like?
It was difficult for me because it was mostly a verbally abusive relationship. He was very cunning that way. He didn't want to have marks where people that he worked with and people that he associated with socially would be able to identify him as a domestic abuser. So he was verbally abusive, and I wasn't able to seek a protective order because it was simply my word against his. He was very credible. I just wanted to exit to give my children some peace, to give them the chance at a healthy adult life by taking that element out. I hoped that it would minimize it. Obviously, the end result is that it didn't. But I feel like it was the services that were available. I wasn't aware of them, and that's another thing that really drives me. I wasn't aware that I could access a hotline or that I could make a safety plan. I had no idea what a safety plan was because I didn't self-identify as a domestic violence victim.
Well, it's a bit of a, it's hard to admit that you're in something that's pretty abusive or you failed at something.
I did. My parents were married 47 years, and that's exactly, I felt like I was failing at my marriage. I wasn't doing something right. I should have been married a lifetime, because that's what I saw as my model.
Or you internalize it and you must fix it because therefore, you would be successful at that.
Right, exactly.
Tell me a little bit about what has changed since you reached out versus where we are today. I mean, can you
Much.
Okay.
For instance, the protective orders, even 5 years ago, it was just on the cusp of changes in protective orders. I think the funding has stepped up domestic violence programs so that there are more prevention programs available, especially on a middle school and high school level, so young adults are aware of what it looks like. And I feel like there is more proactive support available for making a safety plan, so you're just not walking out the door, so you know how to stay safe once you leave, because I mean that is really the most dangerous time.
So at a high, perfect, at a high level, someone watching out there, what do they need to do? What's this safety plan consist of? I mean, how can they start to not just think about, but perhaps act on?
I am a very big advocate, because now that I volunteer with an organization in Henrico County to meet victims at the ER, my goal is to not have them get to the ER. My goal is to have them access a hotline or call into a domestic violence agency, say, this is what's going on with me, I don't know what to do, could you help me? And the services that are available, court, a court accompaniment, helping with protective orders, sitting down and saying, okay, where can you go? Having your children, my children weren't aware that if something happens, if daddy gets violent, you run to the neighbors. I didn't understand what would have kept them safe, and ultimately, I'd like to say that it's between a woman and a man or two intimate partners. The children are so often, by the grace of God, my children were spared. By the grace of God only. We're talking about children. We're talking about parents who maybe are visiting. We're talking about relatives who maybe she goes to stay with a relative and then the whole family's taken out. We have, policemen are very vulnerable as well when they're responding to a call. So the domestic violence agency, local DV agency they have free counseling available to work through some of these things, and I feel like to reframe, to help someone see sort of the dynamics. When you're in it, it's very difficult to see a way out. Is there training or some sort of informational? I mean, because it's not just the individual that's in the abusive; it's the support structure. It's family, friends. I mean, what can those people look for if they suspect or think? Because I have 51 first cousins. We know all of our stuff. I mean, and so I'm thinking that there's probably members of family or friends that suspect but may not know how to approach. And I think, I think just being a friend, relative friend, and instead of trying to get them to do something, because most are so caught up in it, they just need somebody to say, I'm concerned about you. I've noticed some things, and if you want to talk, I'm here. And if you're not comfortable with that, you know, there are some domestic violence agencies that you can call anonymously, and they're not going to make you do anything. And just put it out there. You're planting a seed, and it will be, when the time is right, nurtured. And there's such a lack of control in these type of relationships that for someone to come in and say, you need to do this, do that, it just feels like someone else telling them what to do. And I think once everyone gets to a point when they've just had it, and then just, and I was so fortunate to have friends who watched this evolve and who stood by me, and when the time was right said, you know, I am concerned. My best friend, the week before he shot me, said, I'm concerned that he hasn't gotten all the guns out of the house. Have you checked? Famous last words. I said, I trust him. We've been married 21 years. I trust him. And I don't think it was a matter of trust. I think at that point he'd already made the decision. He was ready to roll with it. And I may or may not have found the gun if I had looked. But she was there for me waiting and never telling me, you've got to leave him. This is what you've got to do. Because leaving is a very precarious time for everyone involved. So leaving may not be the answer right now. And to help, there's nothing, if as a supporting role, they can also call a domestic violence agency, and there's certainly enough information on the internet. I'm personally, there are some danger assessments, and I think it's worthwhile for someone who's in the supporting role, if they go through the danger assessment and are able to answer the questions for that person on behalf of that person, that they can go to them and say, look, I've looked at this danger assessment and I'm very concerned for your safety and your children's safety.
Is there something that also educates the support individual on what the abuser's sort of capacity or frame of mind might be? Because that is a very precarious situation. I
am actually also a peer advocate at VCU Medical Center's Injury and Violence Prevention Program, and I do, when I'm working with someone in the ER in that capacity, I do help them understand where it's coming from, what his next move is probably going to be. It's very predictable.
Well, folks, as I said, this is a very serious topic. Lisette, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to continue with this topic and discussions. We've got some other guests coming up. We'll be hearing more from Lisette in the future. We'll be right back. Thank you so much.
This is firstgov.gov, where we're obsessed with getting you government information.
Brand new student loan applications on the site, baby. This calls for a celebration. Where's your uncle?
So in the end, it was either take the astronaut gig or come work here. What can I say? Duty called.
Dude, that's my cop.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure that's Sam's cop.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No. Sam's. No.
Just log on or email us and get what you need.
C, change of address form. That's how it's done.
D, driver's license renewal.
E, emailing Social Security information.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice, we'll allow it. All right,
What are those?
Government surplus cars for auction.
You posted those online last time.
No, you did.
I'm posting them online this time!
For all your government information, firstgov.gov.
Oh, what have we got here? Sometimes you feel tired. You can't seem to lose those extra pounds off your midsection. And your joints hurt when you take the stairs. Well, you're getting older. But I'm happy to say that there's some simple things we can do to keep you happy and healthy for years to come. We can also lower your risk for some serious diseases the older population is often subject to. Proper nutrition is more important than ever. Your body has changed, you know. Not as many treats. A basic exercise plan, lots of walks and fresh air, and most importantly, come and see me for twice-yearly checkups to help ensure the best possible quality of life. Now, how does that sound? Good boy.
Improve the quality of life for your elderly pet. Schedule twice-yearly checkups that include preventive care and regular lab work. A message from the veterinary members of the American Animal Hospital Association.
to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Folks, hi, this is Cesar. Welcome back. As I said, we have a pretty serious topic this evening. Virginia, through Governor McAuliffe's initiatives, we're looking at new gun safety measures. You heard from our first guest. Next, we have Mike Doucette. He is a 30-year attorney in the Lynchburg Commonwealth Attorney's Office. Actually, he is an award-winning past president of the Virginia Association of Commonwealth Attorneys. He also serves on many committees, including the Virginia State Crime Commission and the Virginia Criminal Justice Service Board. He has chaired the Proactive Order Subcommittee of the Governor's Domestic Violence Prevention Advisory Board. Mike, thank you for joining us.
Cesar, it's great to be here.
Pretty serious topic here.
It is.
And in Virginia, I read a brief outline, both of the governor's announcement and some details. Why is this such an issue for people to grasp? I'm confused.
Well, in Virginia, we do not make it illegal for someone who's been convicted of a domestic violence misdemeanor to possess a firearm. There's a federal law that prohibits it, but there's nothing in Virginia that
So in the state, if I am reckless driving, I lose my license.
Correct.
But if I'm reckless with a gun or with physical abuse, I don't lose privileges?
So long as it's a misdemeanor. You would lose your privilege if it was a felony, but in Virginia, it doesn't become a domestic violence felony until it's the third offense. And even then, the first time is a deferred disposition. So literally, someone can go, it won't be to their fourth instance of domestic violence.
Four strikes in your
four strikes within 20 years that you get the felony at that particular point, and you're barred from possessing a firearm in Virginia. Now, there is a federal law that prohibits one who's been convicted of domestic violence misdemeanor from possessing a firearm. But one of the problems that we have is that relies on a federal prosecution. Federal prosecutors since 9/11 have been very focused on international terrorism. And it's a very cumbersome process. It doesn't say that they can't do a prosecution for possessing a firearm after being convicted of domestic violence, but they're not likely to do it. And so it's not a very effective tool. On the flip side of that is because Virginia does not take away gun rights on a domestic violence misdemeanor, Virginia has no mechanism for restoring those gun rights. And so basically someone who's been convicted of a misdemeanor domestic violence is prohibited from possessing a firearm for life.
Gotcha.
Under the federal laws.
I can see how some people would be all up in angst about that.
So with the legislation that's being proposed, there's actually something for everyone. There's some obviously some much more directed prosecution through Commonwealth's attorneys throughout the state, but there's also that mechanism for the gun rights folks. There's that mechanism to say, hey, let's look at having a way to restore those particular gun rights. We take gun rights away from felons, but we have a mechanism for restoring those rights for felons. We don't have that mechanism for those folks who've been convicted of domestic violence misdemeanors. And so what we're looking for is something that, like I say, really has something for everyone. Maybe nobody likes it all, but everybody gets something out of it. And that's
so
what we're looking at now.
What's the argument for allowing, or what's the rationale? Because I can't come up with one. If you've been convicted, to be able to purchase whatever arms you.
You know, I certainly can't advocate for it.
There's a pattern here. We're not a single, drunken stupor.
I heard in the last General Assembly session somebody argue that a domestic violence victim can just punch him back. That was it was astounding to hear that being said in the courts of justice committees. And that was the rationale of that's why we should not take away gun possession rights for those who've been convicted of these misdemeanors. But these are as Lisette just showed us in the last segment. I mean, these can be obviously that was would have been a felony, but you punch your significant other in the eye and you get basically a deferred disposition the first time. You do it a second time and a third time, and it's just misdemeanors. And so literally it's the fourth time before we in Virginia take any particular action. That's why we think we need to take some action now.
Well, I'm still amazed at some of the opposition to this. What do you see on the horizon? What do you see that's coming here?
Well, you know, it was. And some of certainly your next guest, Senator Favola, has been offering bills in the past General Assembly sessions that have not been able to get anywhere because there was. Let's just say the law was against us. But the Supreme Court of the United States in March of this year decided a case called United States versus Castleman. And in that particular case, they said that Virginia's law, misdemeanor domestic violence law, could be used for a federal prosecution. So we do have that avenue to us again. We lost it for about 4 years. There was a case that was decided by the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals in 2010. And so we sort of lost that avenue. But now we're actually holding cards in our hand when we go into the General Assembly session for 2015. And so again, because federal law basically prohibits someone from possessing a firearm for life, if we have a mechanism to take away those gun rights and then restore those gun rights, like I say, there's something there for everyone. So I'm very optimistic that in this session we can start having a real meaningful dialogue with folks across the political spectrum.
You know, it's an interesting dilemma here because some of the same people I've heard argue against any type of measures for gun safety. They bring up this issue on restoring the rights, but they're not so supportive when you're trying to restore someone's voting rights. Right, so that group we don't want to help. This group we have to help.
You know, it's amazing because in Virginia we do have a mechanism for those who've been convicted of a felony to not only get their civil rights back, and actually it's been accelerated over the years, but there is a mechanism to get your gun rights back if you've been convicted of a felony. That it requires you get your civil rights restored first by the governor, and once you do that, then you can petition the circuit court to get your gun rights back. We do that for felons and have done that for felons for a number of years. We have not done that for those who've been convicted of domestic violence misdemeanors because we've never taken their gun rights away. And so that's why I say this sort of legislation, I think stands a real good chance, hopefully this year, that because, again, we take away those rights so that we can prosecute it within the state system. We have Commonwealth attorneys who deal with domestic violence on a daily basis, prosecuting these particular cases, so we can get the Commonwealth attorneys and not the U.S. attorneys involved in this. And at the same time, like I say, you know, we offer at the end of a period of time a mechanism that would allow these folks to petition. It's a petition. It's still up to the judge to decide whether or not to grant those rights back, but give them that mechanism to try to get those rights back.
Can you share with us some of your day in the life stories, or some of the things that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis that are good and bad? I mean,
well, the one thing that when you become the elected Commonwealth's attorney is you don't try cases like you used to. But the one thing I can say, I've been doing this for 30 years, and 30 years ago, and I think I'm echoing some of what Lisette was talking about. 30 years ago, as a junior person, I was sent to juvenile domestic relations court because that's where the junior person went. We did not take it seriously back then. And for 3 years, I prosecuted domestic violence along with juvenile crimes and all the various crimes that happened there. I wasn't trained in how to do that. It was I knew how to try a case, but I wasn't trained in the circle of violence that goes on, the cycle of violence that goes on in domestic violence cases.
Wow.
And so in Lynchburg, we started to see the light probably about 20 years ago, and actually I have to thank my wife for that. My wife's a retired domestic violence prosecutor. Came into our office originally and then went to a neighboring office. But it's folks like my wife who are dedicated to being domestic violence prosecutors, and these are tough cases to try. I mean, I've tried murder cases, I've tried drug cases, I've tried the whole range of cases. Domestic violence cases are some of the hardest cases to try because many times the victims, for a number of reasons, don't want to go forward with the prosecution, and yet we as prosecutors want to to break that cycle of violence and give them the help that we possibly can. So like when Lisette was talking about she didn't know about this and she didn't know about that, I mean that's one of the things that we're working on very hard is to get the word out about safety plans and get the word out about what is available to you as a victim. And it doesn't necessarily require locking the abuser up. I mean, at some point, obviously, if it persists, that's the option. But so many of these victims are looking for basically to make the violence stop, but they're economically dependent on their abuser, and so
are the support structures in place, or are they funded?
They're there. They're you know, obviously we'd like to see more funding. Everything with prosecution right now is underfunded. Bob Horan, who was the Commonwealth attorney here in Fairfax County for decades, always said that in Virginia we do prosecution on the cheap. And we have. I mean, in Virginia, we are about 140 prosecutors short of what our staffing standards call for. Really? So, you know, we'd love to see the staffing standards up. But when it comes to domestic violence, you know, we are seeing the funding. A lot of it comes from the Federal Department of Justice, but some of it also comes from the State Department of Criminal Justice Services. So we do have the programs out there. But even if we don't have the funding, I mean, we've got victim witness folks in our office who are going to do what they can to get the word out, to make people safe, to get them into shelters if necessary. But we're going to do all we can to break the cycle of violence.
What are some of the things you want to have our viewers remember or take away or be knowledgeable about?
You know, the one thing is that there are answers out there. If someone is a victim of domestic violence, there are answers out there. You don't have to go it alone. There's lots of people who want to help, and by help I don't mean necessarily lock the abuser up. I mean, a lot of the victims are very, very worried that they're going to lose the breadwinner or they're going to lose. You know, they just want him to stop, or her. Stop with the violence, and so we do have anger management classes that are available. We do have domestic violence shelters if necessary. We have a whole range of services that run from just, you know, getting involved and getting you some information all the way up to putting the abuser in jail. But there is a whole range of services that are available. Just, you know, reach out to us and we'll reach back out to you and do everything we can to help.
Are we going to get this done?
I hope so. I'm like I say, because of this Supreme Court case that was decided in March, I think we have a lot more, have many more cards in our hand than we had even last year during the 2014 General Assembly session.
Well, we're making progress.
We are.
Mike, thank you so much for joining us.
Cesar, thank you for having me.
Folks, again, this is a very important topic. Please come back. We've got a couple more segments. Senator Favola is up next. We'll be right back. Again, thank you.
This year, 28,000 Americans will be diagnosed with oral cancer. Every year, 7,000 Americans die of oral cancer.
I'm Eva Cohen, and I'm an oral cancer survivor. I didn't fit the profile. I didn't smoke or drink. I had no family history of cancer, no family history of cancer. I was 31 years old. 31 years old. I went to see my dentist about a sore in my mouth that wouldn't heal. It was oral cancer. I had to have a radical neck dissection and a portion of my tongue reconstructed. I didn't know if I was going to live or die.
I'm Surgeon General Richard Carmona. The survival rate for oral cancer is only 50%. Oral cancer can happen to anyone. If you have a sore or lesion in your mouth that doesn't heal within 2 weeks, see your dentist. Early detection is the key.
Early detection saves lives. I know.
1 in 8 Americans goes hungry. One idea helped change that. A community started a garden that blossomed into farmers markets. 1 in 6 children lives in poverty. One group of women found an answer by opening a daycare center that their neighbors could afford. Today, 36 million Americans live in poverty. But one by one, people are helping themselves and each other to change the picture of poverty to one of hope. For easy ways you can help, visit povertyusa.org.
2 words for you. Pop quiz. Ready? Name any funny movie. A drama. Name a mystery. And one more thing. Name the movie your kids saw today in science class.
Know what really matters. Know about your kid's school. And know about your kid. Find out 100 ways to know more, do more.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Hi folks, Cesar back again. Thank you for joining us. Again, very important topic tonight. We're talking about some gun safety measures that the governor here in Virginia is taking on, along with a few allies in the Senate. One of those allies is joining us tonight, Senator Barbara Favola. She represents Virginia's 31st Senate District. And prior to being our senator, she spent 14 years in the Arlington County Board. She is a tireless worker. I see her everywhere talking about all the things they're getting done. And last year, between the bills she wrote on education and the environment and transportation, she managed to get the Senate to pass a bill on domestic violence and firearms. Senator Favola, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Cesar. I'm so glad you're taking on this important topic.
It's got to be done.
Oh, absolutely.
Tell us about it.
Well, last year I put a gun safety bill in, which essentially would have removed a firearm from a domestic violence abuser who had been convicted, not accused, but convicted on misdemeanor accounts related to stalking or sexual assault and battery of a household member.
This is not someone using harsh language. This is a criminal.
This is a criminal. Okay. And it's really important to note that researchers across the country, and we had some key researchers at the University of Virginia tell us that domestic violence always escalates. Sure. So somebody who's a stalker today, or a sexual assault person who's doing sexual assaults today, later will become far more dangerous. Sure. And actually put the victim at risk. Sure. Serious risk. And the governor just came forward with a proposal, which I think is very comprehensive. And even in the governor's proposal, there's an important fact that's noted. In cases where domestic violence occurs and a firearm is available, the victim, which for the most part is a woman, has a 500% greater chance of being shot or a homicide taking place, which I think is, the statistics are there.
Senator,
these are people who are violent.
You'll have to help me understand this. This is pretty. What's the argument to why not do this?
Well, there's this very contorted purist view that you should not, take guns away at all from anybody because it is a Second Amendment right.
Don't you lose certain rights if you've been convicted of crimes?
Well, that's what we're arguing. Okay. You're acting very rationally. We're saying that with rights come responsibilities.
Absolutely.
And what about the right you just mentioned of, families and neighborhoods to remain safe? What about, the rights of women in their households to not be attacked? What about, there are things that have to be balanced, and the General Assembly right now, unfortunately, is using a litmus test approach to making laws, and it is extraordinarily dangerous.
So again, give me an example of an argument. Let's reverse roles. I'm you. I'm trying to convince someone on the other side that this makes sense. What are they saying?
Well, it's particularly problematic in the House of Delegates. Most of those seats are very safe. So when you go before the Courts of Justice Committee in the House of Delegates, you're talking to a number of people from very safe Republican districts.
Sure.
And their view is if they waver at all on this sort of gun rights position, they will be primaried by somebody to the far right.
But it's not a binary issue. This is we're talking about a segment of a population that's been convicted.
That's right. My view is that the folks that I had to appear before on the Courts of Justice Committee didn't care about representing their constituents. They were more concerned about keeping a very small faction, Tea Party faction, satisfied. So there was no dialogue. In fact, I was not given an opportunity to present my case. And I brought speakers with me that day. Your previous guest, Michael Doucette, was there. He represented the State Commonwealth Attorneys Association. I had the Chiefs of Police, the State Association of Chiefs of Police, the State Association of Sheriffs, a number of women advocate groups. And they were not allowed to stand up and make a statement. They could only stand up and say what group they represented. So it was a very challenging situation. And, you know, this is, in my mind, is a public safety issue. And you should not be walking away from it. When you have law enforcement so solidly behind a proposal like this, it is worthy of serious consideration. So I'm hoping the governor's proposals really get a serious review, and he's got 3 proposals that I think really are the cornerstones of his agenda. One is he wants universal background checks, which
seems reasonable.
And he wants to close the gun show loophole, which again seems reasonable. His second proposal is very much like my bill I put in last year, dealing with those who were convicted of misdemeanor sexual assault type crimes. So we're going to try to go at that again. And of course he wants to go back to the limit that we had in place for some 20+ years that the Republicans, you know, voted out 2 sessions ago, 1 handgun a month limit. We want to go back to that.
Real quick on that note. 12 guns a year, a handgun a year is not enough.
Why wouldn't that be enough?
Where are people putting these guns? What are they doing with them? I mean, I would like someone to explain it to me, because
it's very problematic when you have people who don't think buying 1 handgun a month is not enough. It's very problematic.
I'm not suggesting in any way we take guns away from anyone. And you should be able to buy whatever guns, but...
No, right. We're just trying to, again, put something in context. Remember, Virginia has been noted for being the gun-running state.
Do we know where the guns came from that were used to shoot the police officers in Brooklyn yet? Do we know that?
I don't know that for a fact, so I don't want to give you misinformation.
We'll have our folks look into that, but I would be mortified if those guns came from Virginia.
Yeah, I would be too, and it would be very shameful. I do want to note that one area I am working on in the domestic violence realm has to do with children, and children who have observed domestic violence really need to have counseling. They have witnessed a very traumatic situation. Many of them internalize it. They have a very difficult time you know, sort of adjusting to what we would consider a more normal environment. And again, we want to prevent domestic violence. That would be our goal as a society. So I asked the Crime Commission last year to study the opportunity to establish a grant program encouraging local governments and nonprofits to actually provide counseling to children. How's that being received? Well, I'm putting in another budget amendment. It wasn't received as well as I would have liked. And Fairfax and other jurisdictions in Northern Virginia, and I hope in other parts of the state, are making it possible for the children who've witnessed domestic violence to go into counseling, but it's not as routine or robust a program, and it's not statewide. And I just think it absolutely is critically important if we're going to, you know, break this cycle and make a difference in the lives of the next generation.
Are your initiatives going through the Senate, do you think?
Well, last year I did get some Republican votes for my bill. It did pass the Senate, and I had Democrats, all Democrats voted for it, and 9 Republicans voted yes, 6 voted no, and 5 walked off the floor. So we considered that to be actually a success. Then it went to the House. So I don't see the dynamic changing. Unfortunately, and 2015 is an election year, so again, politicians are going to go back to playing to their base and worrying about their intra-party fights and all that. So unfortunately, I don't see the dynamic changing, but I would hope that interest groups and others who care about this issue can start working on the ground in these jurisdictions where lawmakers are refusing to even give an honest hearing to my bill and to similar bills.
Did it not even get to the General Assembly floor?
The House, no, we didn't get to the House floor. No, it didn't. And Marcus Simon, Delegate Marcus Simon, patroned the bill in the House, and he worked very hard. And we really did hit a brick wall. So I think this is an example of why we need to change how we're currently drawing these lines, these district lines. You know, we've got to elect representatives who are willing to actually represent their constituents. So
it's an issue I've talked about for 20 years. So every 10 years we get to deal with it, but it seems like nothing really gets accomplished. And it's becoming more and more entrenched in terms of the views.
It seems to be more polarizing than it has been in the past, and well, I don't want to say everybody, but some of the key players in the House are taking a page from the Washington page book, which is unfortunate. But we need good people to fight. You have a great program. You're doing your due diligence, getting this issue aired, and
what can the folks out there do? What else can they do? I mean,
well, I think if the average person is really willing to pick up the phone and tell their lawmaker that, this matters to me, and pay attention, and domestic violence is a real issue, and taking guns away from, perpetrators, especially those who've been convicted, is a good thing. I want you to do this, and we need to set up a system where we can go statewide and really delve into these districts where the lawmakers are simply ignoring the wish of their constituents.
Is Governor McAuliffe going to keep fighting this?
I think he is. I mean, he's in the job for the right reasons, and he was, to his credit, he was very upfront about his agenda when he ran for governor.
He still won.
He still won. And he believes, folks knew what they were getting when they voted for him, and he is committed to moving forward. And he believes he has an obligation to make his state safer, and that is a big element behind his agenda.
Well, that's a big job because, again, Virginia is known, as you said, as this conduit of things going through. So, Senator, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Cesar.
Folks, you've just heard from one of the prime folks involved in the fight here to get this gun safety measure through the House. We'll be right back. Again, very serious topic this evening. Thanks for joining. We'll be right back.
Around the world, 1 out of every 3 women will be beaten or otherwise abused in their lifetime, often by a family member or loved one. A future free from violence. It's all she's ever wished for.
Did you know you have the power to stop children from joining gangs? You can help a father find a job and home for his family. You can assist a woman who can't afford the medicine she needs to live and the home she can't live without. You can choose to make a difference in our community. Support Volunteers of America, and you can help improve the lives of nearly 2 million Americans each year, with programs and services that help individuals and families overcome their challenges to become as independent as possible. Support the programs that are working in our community. Contact Volunteers of America today. Call 1-800-899-0089.
For some folks, saving for the future is easy, but for you, it might take a little more effort. Saving for your future is your responsibility, and there's a lot to save for.
I never thought of that.
Like your child's education, perhaps uncovered medical expenses, or just to be sure you can live the way you want when you retire. The time is now to save for tomorrow. Save now or work forever. The choice is yours. Choose to save.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Hi folks, Cesar here for our last session. Welcome back. Joining me now is Delegate Richard "Rip" Sullivan. He is the representative for the 48th District of the House of Delegates, and I believe you won that seat in a special election.
I did, middle of the summer.
Oh, that's right, that's right. You went to Langley High School and you got your law degree from UVA. How's it been in the House of Delegates, by the way?
I'm a grizzled veteran now already.
Okay, okay.
After 3 months.
Yeah.
No, it's been a terrific experience. I'm looking forward to session, which starts now in about 3 weeks.
It sounds like it's going to be a challenge for some of these common sense bills. How do you see it?
It is. I'm a glass half full kind of guy. I'm optimistic.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of the governor's proposals and the proposals that Senator Favola was just talking to you about are good proposals and ought to be attractive to both sides of the aisle. I'm getting ready to push a piece of legislation that's not unlike Senator Favola's. It deals with restraining orders.
Okay.
In Virginia right now, if there's a domestic violence restraining order in place, in other words, a judge has found that there's been domestic violence and there's risk of more, so there's a restraining order. The defendant in that case has to surrender any gun permit, any concealed carry permit the defendant might have, typically, of course, it's a man, is prohibited from purchasing a firearm, is prohibited from transporting a firearm during the pendency of that protective order, but is not required to surrender any weapons that might already be in that defendant's possession.
What's the argument against that? Why?
Well, there's always the argument about taking guns away from people and invoking the Second Amendment. The irony is that when you hear opponents of gun safety measures make their argument, they often talk about how these proposals, they charge that these proposals take guns away from the good guys, and so only the bad guys will have access to guns. The irony here, of course, is we're talking about someone whom we know to be a bad guy.
Right.
And of course, the rules
How does
are quite
the
clear.
well-regulated militia apply to this person?
It doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't. Okay. But here, and I heard Senator Favola quoting some astounding statistics to you.
Pretty
about
scary.
How well, we are. The statistics are overwhelming. That if someone has committed domestic violence once, he or she, more often than not, he is incredibly likely to do it again. So here we have a situation where we've got a home in turmoil. So much so that a judge has intervened and put in place a protective order. But the person who's the subject of that protective order is not required to surrender his gun during the pendency of that protective order. We're going to try to change that with some legislation that the governor was talking about in his press conference that I'm going to introduce next session. It is common sense. It gets guns out of the hands of demonstrably bad guys.
So again, the numbers in the House are a little different than the Senate.
A little different.
What? Obviously, you go to persuade folks for support. What do they say in response to your bill? What's that conversation like?
Folks who resist this sort of legislation are masters at the slippery slope argument. Well, GRIP. If we do this, then you'll want to take guns away from someone else. And they always want to talk about the next step.
But that's not in this law.
This step.
It's not in the law, right? It's not contained.
It is not. Of course not.
Okay,
But the argument is always, well, we're worried about what you'll try to do next. And what I hope to do is convince people to focus on just the relatively small but significant step that this particular piece of legislation will take and will potentially save save lives, and not take guns out of the hands of law-abiding citizens. We're talking about people we know who have broken the law.
Do you have pictures of the victims that have been abused?
The answer to that is, I'm sure. I think it's enough to draw the mental picture of what happens in these homes. I mean, I've been in court arguing for protective orders. The fact patterns are tragic in every single case.
Some people don't believe in facts. They don't believe in data.
It was John Adams who said facts are stubborn things.
Yeah, they are.
The facts, we believe that the facts in these cases, or in this situation, are incontrovertible. That this will do good, that it will prevent violence, and that it will do no harm to any law-abiding citizens' Second Amendment rights.
I would support this 150%. I'm still.
Can you come to Richmond?
I can certainly testify whatever way you want. I think the problem is, again, the numbers in the House, and there seems to be this ingrained view of some people that just can't accept some realities.
The numbers are daunting.
Yeah.
I know you were talking with Senator Favola about everything from redistricting and trying to get those issues.
Years away.
I knocked on doors all summer as I ran for this seat, and I can tell you that folks are passionate about this issue. When folks talk about what they want done in Richmond, they are frustrated by precisely the issue you've put your finger on, that there seems to be this sort of visceral reaction that isn't particularly rooted in facts, but is more rooted in people trying to scare people about what might happen.
Sure.
We're trying to deal with what we know is happening, and the violence that we know happens in homes. And I can tell you, the doors I knocked on, the voters, this was always among their top issues, and they want their legislators in Richmond to take action. They are frustrated that legislators who are more concerned with holding on to their seat than they are with advancing the ball on making citizens of Virginia safer refuse to move on these issues. So we're gonna keep talking. We're gonna keep making our case. We're gonna bring people to Richmond, and we will keep fighting this until we get there.
How's the governor gonna kind of take this to the streets?
Well, you talk about someone who won't stop talking.
Oh, I know.
Terry McAuliffe,
yeah.
I'm just enormously pleased that he's there. I'm looking forward to working with him. I expect him to be the kind of tireless advocate on this issue that he's been on so many others, including economic issues. And
town halls. I mean, do you envision?
Look, we got 6 weeks of session coming up at us, and we are going to try to get as many people down to Richmond to talk to these other legislators as we can. If we're not successful this time, and I'm sure hoping we are, but if we're not, sure, we will take this issue around the state. We'll continue to talk about it. I'll continue to knock on doors. Don't forget there's an election this fall, or next fall, 2015. And I believe that this will continue to be an issue all across the Commonwealth. I mean, and of course, quite outside the domestic violence context, gun issues in Virginia are huge. I just took my son to start at Virginia Tech last fall, and this idyllic place full of energy and enthusiasm and it's vibrant, vibrating with intellectual curiosity. And when you get to that memorial, it is an emotionally wrenching place to stand. And we just have to keep talking about these issues. We have to keep banging the drum. And convincing people that we're on the right side of this issue.
So if you talk to people the following day or the following week or within a month of that event, something like this would have gotten unanimous support. What is it about our culture that we forget things so easily? I mean,
it's hard to figure out, isn't it? I mean, there's this sort of short attention span because, of course, Tech was followed by Connecticut, and of course there was Colorado. I mean, you would think people would sort of get that pattern. That unfortunately, it's just a terribly tragic pattern. Our job is to remind them, keep reminding them. People get busy; they focus on other issues. but it's hard to think of too many issues that are bigger than this one. So we will keep talking about it.
Maybe it's I'm in sales and marketing, so maybe it's the way you title or package or present ideas to people that they're not able to support it or they're against it. Maybe it's a rebranding of things. Maybe it's a rebranding of a bill. Maybe you don't call it, something that's going to draw folks to respond to it. Maybe
sometimes things are as simple as the label. I mean, sometimes you'll find legislators who are more willing to support a fee than they are a tax.
Correct.
Depends on what you call it.
Right.
The language has changed subtly. We talk about gun violence rather than gun control, which may hit some people's ears a little differently. I mean, obviously, ultimately, when the rubber meets the road, it's the substance of the thing that you've got to convince someone on. But I see your point. That just getting people to even think and talk about it.
And that's what I mean. I think we fail to sometimes realize that people are only connecting emotionally these days. Because there's so much noise out there, there's so much that they're bombarded with, and it's the emotional connection. I've always said, I mean, if people really wanted to do something, they would connect emotionally with the issue. And that's, we as Democrats, I'm a Democrat by the way, and we tend to be very cerebral about things and think, well, here are all the facts, how can you be against these facts? Well, people don't always assimilate data in content with other data, and the substance does get lost.
It gets to your earlier point, though, about how the emotion in the aftermath of tech or the aftermath of Colorado or aftermath of Newtown, you've got that emotional connection, but it tends to dissipate for some reason, and we've got to find a way to keep that emotional energy up. Folks that I'm working with in the gun violence community are doing exactly that, working hard to keep the energy up, whether it's because of an impending election or whatever it might be, so that we can make more progress. And I'm very, very hopeful that we'll make some progress in the next session.
Good. Well, you've got a big election next year. I hope good things happen for you. How are you feeling about it?
I'm feeling that it's so far away I can't even think about it right now. I'm focused on January 14th, which is the first day of the session. We'll get down there. We'll try to make some progress for the people of Virginia, and then next summer and fall, we'll see what the people how they think we did.
Well, good. I'm looking forward to it.
So am I.
But just real quick before we break here, what's the one thing you want the folks to know about you?
About me?
Yeah, just give them a little quick.
How much time do we got?
You got about 10, 15 seconds.
10, 15 seconds. That I'm honored that the people of the 48th are sending me to Richmond, and that I'm going to work as hard as I possibly can, and it won't be for lack of effort if we don't get anything done next year.
Well, good. Well, again, it's been a pleasure having you on.
Thanks,
Thank you so much for
the invitation.
Absolutely. And folks, definitely as you're thinking about some of these issues, you may want to think about who your local House of Representative is, who your local state senator is, and certainly give them your opinion on these things. It does matter, and certainly it matters when you go out and vote. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.